name is Ryleigh, and I'm currently serving USC Lancaster as the Director of Student Life. I graduated from USC Columbia earlier this year in 2020 or May of 2020, and I did complete the graduation with Leadership Distinction or GLD process. So I wanted to take the time and talk through my ePortfolio and share some of the things that I gained through the GLD process. So I did pursue the PCE pathway, professional and civic engagement. This pathway just made the most sense for me and my experiences during college, on campus and off campus. I talk a little bit about the University Ambassadors program that I was a part of. I talk about my study abroad experiences, a lot of experiences volunteering and healthcare settings. So, like I said, the PCE pathway just made the most sense for me. And I did go through the University 401 course to complete my GLD process. I felt that this would help me stay on track and help me really keep ahead on all the things that the GLD process asks you to do. I do feel like I am a pretty organized person, but there's always that opportunity to be a little bit more organized, and so I thought that the GLD University 401 class would kind of be that opportunity for me, and I did get really good results, so I would highly recommend that people do the U 401 class because there is so many moving parts of the GLD process that you definitely don't want to miss. After you do so much work and you put in so much time to this rigorous process, you almost don't want to get any other outcome but a great one. So not to be saying that doing it on your own won't work, but I definitely did great with the class, and all my classmates did as well. There were about 10 of us in there, and we all were able to pass our GLD criteria and graduate with leadership distinction. So, to go through my ePortfolio and start talking about it a little, I chose to have this big, huge picture of me as the background image when you first get on my website and you're on this About Me section. I struggled a long time with whether or not this picture was weird to just get on my website and here you are just staring at me and I'm staring back at you. But I felt like this is the About Me page, so there's no other image that could describe me better than me. So here I am, and my name, and then my pathway that I did pursue. And then you scroll down a little, and you've got some information and kind of like a letter. I guess you could describe it as like a letter from the editor, me being the editor. A little bit of information about me, why I chose to go to USC, what it's like being a Gamecock student for the past 4 years, my plans after graduation, and so what I thought would be my plans after graduation. It's actually kind of funny looking back at this and knowing what I'm doing now. I have always been so set on being a pediatric physical therapist, but with the times that we are in and the times that I graduated in, I needed a plan B, and sometimes your plan B is just as awesome, if not even more awesome than your plan A. So if there's one thing that I have learned, it's to be flexible, but it is funny to look back at this and see what my plans were and what they are now. And these plans still may very well come into fruition, but it's all about being flexible and, kind of going where life takes you sometimes. So, like I said, some information about what I'm going to do, what I thought I would do after graduation, my hometown. I talk a little bit about, growing up in a small southern town and what it's like to, be thankful for your hometown, but also want to separate yourself and be something separate from what the regular stereotype of someone from your town could be sometimes. Talking about how I felt about the GLD process, and how I originally just did it for my resume, but how much I gained from doing it. I called it a humbling, deep adventure, and why I chose the pathway that I did. As I mentioned, the University Ambassadors whole thing, which is like USC's tour guides, where we call ourselves the front door of campus. I was an ambassador from my freshman year all the way to the very end of my senior year, doing tours online through Zoom. So an ambassador through and through forever. And I end it with a little nice so long greeting, best Ryleigh and waiters. And then something that I wanted to include were these little icons on the bottom, a girl with a graduation cap, a Carolina big block C. This is looks like someone doing physical therapy or some type of healthcare career, and then South Carolina with Lancaster being highlighted in red to just kind of describe me. Something else about doing this whole process is deciding what software or what website you want to wanted to use to make your vision come to life. So I did choose Weebly, and this was the one that spoke most to me, that I thought I would be able to do the most with. And one of the features that I liked with Weebly is that you could link your photos to different web pages. So if you click on any of these icons, you will be taken to my resume, which was really important to me at the time because it was just kind of another link to more about me, whether it was employers looking at it or even just family taking a look. You could kind of go straight to my resume and see all of my accomplishments and what I had been up to during my years of college. So that is the About Me page. And next we hit the key insights. So if you're familiar with the GLD process, you know that you have to have those three key insights that kind of bind your in the classroom experiences with your beyond the classroom experiences. So one thing that was important with my portfolio is that I wanted anyone who looked at it to know what GLD was. So I included this little definition of a key insight that I got from the USC Connect GLD content guide. A key insight identifies learning that has been transformative for you and that has caused a change in your behavior or way of thinking. So I go down here and you can click either of the three key insights, and we'll go ahead and click on the first one, which was impact over ability. So the main idea behind this key impact was just that it's important to see others for all that they are and all that they have to offer, and not what is just different from you or different from others. So of course, with these key insights, I mentioned that you combine in the classroom experience with the beyond the classroom experience. And the course that I used for this one was my elementary American Sign Language course. That is myself, the professor of the course, Professor Martinez Johnson, and then one of my friends in class. Her name was Victoria. She's now a elementary school teacher. And the out of the classroom experience that I used for this was just volunteering out in the community, doing my shadowing hours at a physical therapy clinic the summer before my senior year. So basically, with having a professor that was a part of the deaf community and the misconceptions that I had coming in, wondering how the class would work with a teacher that does not even talk to us, it turns out that we learned new ways to communicate with each other, and there's so many ways to communicate with others, whether it's your body language or your sign language. It's just about opening your mind to different possibilities and different ways of doing things. And sometimes it's easier said than done because we are so set in our ways, but the more you venture out and do things differently, it really makes you a more well-rounded individual. And so we have to do the artifacts with GLD. So the artifacts for each key insight are your physical proof of what you learned. This artifact is my friend Victoria and I. We had to do a project called ABC Story, and we had to basically come up with a way to describe or go through the sign language alphabet with a video. So we decided to do it with the morning routine. I'll play like a second of it. And you'll see if I can find some more. There's me. All right, that's enough, Akesha, but you'll see us kind of do different hand motions, and those are the different letters of the sign language alphabet, and we kind of just incorporate it into this morning routine. But a lot of people did different things, so there's more than one way to do this. But it was a lot of fun to figure out, and we did really well with it. So my second artifact down here is of my personal statement. When I was planning to go directly into graduate school, I wrote about one of the patients that I encountered. She happened to have multiple sclerosis, so the whole point of this encounter being, though she had, no control over her bodily movement, she may have had tremors that she can't control, or she may not have been able to get up and go get some water on her own. The amount of information that she possessed was kind of limitless, and the fact that she was, willing to pour into me and take a liking to this little random college girl just shows that you encounter special people when you least expect it. So you've always got to be willing to see people for all that they are and not what you just think that you see. So with this artifact B, I highlighted where I talked about this patient with MS and my experiences with her and just how she impacted me. Obviously, if I wrote about her in my personal statement and then included it in my GLD ePortfolio, she did mean a lot to me. So this was the impact over ability key insight number 1, and I did include some photos going down. I mentioned that one at the beginning, and then the one at the bottom was just of the brain image of somebody with multiple sclerosis, and then kind of the definition, basic definition of what it is. And you move on to key insight number 2. Whose line of communication is it anyways? I've tried to be a little creative with some of my titles just to break up being so information heavy. And I think it worked. I think some of them are kind of clever, but I guess it would be up to someone else to, decide that fully, or really let me know if I was successful with that or not. But for this key insight, the in the classroom experience that I talked about was my experiences in Exercise Science 224, which is Anatomy and Physiology 2. Being an exercise science major, I did a lot of anatomy and physiology, and that was a big part of my college experience, so it made sense to connect a lot to that. With this artifact, here is the nervous system pathways diagram. So basically the point of including this is to talk about how the brain interacts with the rest of the body through these pathways. And this is the diagram that our professor, Dr. Thompson, had us basically live, eat, and sleep by. You'll see how each pathway goes through the brain to the spine, to the hands or to the feet, and just what different things that they cause our bodies to do, and different signals that they will send to make us have our everyday lives. So I kind of talk about communication in this like microscopic example, and then I brought it to a larger example of how our medical and healthcare providers and our care teams have to communicate to make sure that we are getting the best care possible. So again, while I was doing a lot of physical therapy and volunteering in those shadowing positions, I saw a lot of healthcare providers use the SOAP notes. So this was my artifact B. This is an example of actual SOAP notes, and then these were the SOAP notes that I kind of created on my own when I was with one of the physical therapists that I was shadowing, and would just kind of quiz myself and see if I was able to grasp what was going on. But the importance of this key insight was to just talk about how key communication is, and the way that communication is literally all around us, just from myself being able to, my brain telling my hand to click this pen, all the way to, giving your mom a hug. I mean, it's literally all around you. One way that I really liked one thing that I really liked about this key insight is the example that I used to really drive home the importance of communication. And I'm looking for it, and of course I can't find it. Here it is. And I'll just read like maybe a blurb of it, or maybe I'll just summarize it. But it's basically about how this Hawaiian American boy, um, if all of his nervous system little ticks and tacks would not have um, done what they were supposed to and fired correctly at the correct times, then we wouldn't have had him become the 44th president of the United States of America. I do make the point to say, regardless of your political stance, it's easy and clear to see that this person, which turns out to be President Obama, as you read through the passage, really had a big impact on American history and the trajectory of our country. And if one thing wouldn't have happened at his earliest stages of life, then we could have been in a completely different situation than we are. So, yeah, communication is key. So, that was my third key insight. And then we also just had some pictures of me with patients doing different things. Let me go back and go to my third one. The key insight is called Flashbacks Are for More Than Just Fridays. This one was on how important and how key and imperative it is to know your history to be able to know where you're going in your future. I started it off with a quote from J. Cole. This has always been one of my favorite rappers, probably since 9th or 10th grade of high school. And so I was able to incorporate one of his quotes from one of his songs, and I thought that this was a way to make my ePortfolio a little bit more me and less stuffy and just kind of straight to the point with these things. So the for this key insight, the in the classroom experience was actually from a history course that I took while I was a dual enrollment student at USC Lancaster with Professor Biggs. It was a history course, History 112, and it was about the history after the American Civil War, so the history like after 1865, and just the experiences that I had in the course from looking at primary sources and looking at unbiased sources and how we would kind of connect the different thought processes and opinions and biases going on at that time. And also what I learned from a lot of my peers during those classes. I found that I remember finding that a lot of my peers had no idea that a lot of these things even happened that we talked about, and just how people can truly be at different levels of knowledge on different topics. But either way, you've got to learn about it sometime, somewhere in your education, because it will really impact the rest of your life. My key insight for this one was one of my, looks like a little blackboard assignment where we had to do a final letter. It's dated 2015, where I had to write it to Professor Biggs and talk about the things that I had learned through the class. And then I think it's funny that I signatured it, Ryleigh, former surface learner. This is a lot about, learning on the surface versus going underneath the surface to really understand history. That was another big point that I made. But I do think it's funny to look back at this and see the way that I, turned in assignments and how I talked and how I kind of wrote things the way I did in high school versus being out of college now, and how far I've come, because this is honestly a little bit of a rough passage. So I felt bad for Professor Biggs for even having to read it. But we have a quote here, and I believe that this was actually from the syllabus as one of our learning objectives. Yeah, appreciate various ways history can be used to enhance efforts to address contemporary problems. So I took that straight from our syllabus and then connected it straight to my experience studying abroad during a Maymester to Greece and Italy right before my senior year. Just talking about how, in history, the ancient Olympics began because they wanted to kind of unify the different groups of people within Greece and Italy. And, we really don't think of the Olympics as that way, but, when you dive into history, you find that things are really completely different. You get a completely different connotation for things before you do that deep dive. So The artifact for this one, these were the little journal entries that I did while I was abroad. This was a part of the class that we had to kind of keep these journals, but it was also cool to have these forever and be able to look back at them when, like a year from now, for example, which is like now, or 20 years from now, or 30 years from now. I always have these to look back on, and they're kind of like my, primary accounts of this part of my own life's history, if you can think of it that way. And then I also talked about, as a future healthcare provider, wanting to know the history of my patients, because it could be a really great reason why they have the whatever situation or whatever ailment that they're having now. It could be familial, it could be genetic, you never know what it could be. So just why we need to know our history and how we can benefit from knowing who we are and what we've come from and all of that good stuff. This was a little fun section down here. I just included some of my favorite pictures from the trip. That's Acropolis. This was in Athens. This was actually at a they call it physiotherapy over there instead of physical therapy. Beautiful beaches in Greece. This was in Capri. Beyonce has been here, side note. So I was able to just kind of put little descriptions of the pictures when you go over them. And this was just another really cool aspect of Weebly that I was happy to incorporate on my website. So this was where the Olympics were in Greece. So yeah, another really cool aspect. So then the last part of the ePortfolio is the leadership section, where basically you are to highlight an issue that you see and come up with a way to fix this issue or make a big dent in this problem. So you can really go any direction that you would like with this, but with mine, I chose to go with the medical mistrust of minority populations and why you have a lot of grandparents and great aunts, great uncles that are of these minority populations that talk about not wanting to go to the doctor because they don't trust them, and things of that nature, which is really a problem because there are so many health concerns and health problems that can be fixed if you just find them and address them early, and it could, save lives, of course. So with the issue, I went back into one of the most known examples of why medical mistrust exists among Black Americans, which is the Tuskegee study and with the syphilis, and how these healthcare professionals got a lot of minority Black doctors in on the whole thing to make these Black men feel like they had bad blood and to get help for these different conditions, and so they actually were not helping them at all but making them sicker. This is a really short way to describe the Tuskegee studies, but it did go on for 40 years, and just how bad that they were impacting these people's lives when they were acting like they were helping them, and to find out later, they were given reparations and things, but you can't really replace not being able to trust healthcare providers. And this is something that has gone on for generations and generations and generations. So I even talked about how I saw these examples in my own family, how my great grandmother did not go to the doctor for her ovarian cancer until it was way too late. Her brother did a similar thing. My Uncle Frank, he had a similar situation. Just didn't go to the doctor, didn't get help until it was way too late, and his cancer was way too overgrown to even do something about it. So here's a little wheel of what happens. There's this incident